Thank you, Mark, and thank you everyone to join us to this session. On behalf of the organizing committee of the National Conference for Teachers of English Costa Rica, I want to welcome you to our next interactive webinar. Dr. Keith Folse is Professor of TESOL at the University of Central Florida, where he teaches in several programs at the undergraduate, graduate, and doctoral levels. He has taught English for 40 years in the United States, Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, Japan, and Kuwait. He has also taught French in the United States and Spanish in Japan. His research areas include best practices in teaching, learning, and remembering new vocabulary. He has published articles in TESOL Quarterly, MexTESOL Journal, TESOL Journal, and other journals. He has written 70 books on a variety of topics for both the students and teachers. His most recent teacher book is The Grammar Answer Key. Dr. Folse has presented at TESOL conferences many times on practical topics involving the teaching of grammar, speaking, vocabulary, and writing. Here to speak to us today with the presentation, A Lexical Approach to Teaching Simple Past Tense, please welcome Dr. Keith Folse.
So hello, everyone. So hello from Orlando, Florida in the United States. And I was looking at something. I'm supposed to be in Costa Rica with you, but I'm not in Costa Rica. I'm here at Walnut Street in Orlando, Florida. And what do we have in common? Well, I'll tell you, I noticed Costa Rica just yesterday. So I'm not shopping in a lot of stores now because of the virus. You know, we can go out and I only go to certain places, but one place I always go is the vegetable store, the fruit store. And there, sure enough, I picked up some bananas and the guy said, we only have green bananas today because they're fresh. Okay, I'll take it. And then when I got home and put it in the car, I was taking it out of the car and I noticed the stickers everywhere, Costa Rica, Costa Rica, Costa Rica. So I thought, doggone it, I'm supposed to be in Costa Rica this weekend. I'm not supposed to be here in Orlando. But another thing we have in common is that you can't hear it right now, but there's a pretty bad thunderstorm happening right now. It's the beginning of our rainy season. So I thought, well, I've been in Nicaragua, I've been in Costa Rica, I've been in Honduras, and I know when the rainy season comes, it rains. Same thing here. So I looked to see what your weather was, and sure enough, it said today in San Jose, 74 degrees. I'm not sure what that is in Celsius right now, and raining. So we had the same thing here, rain. So if by any chance the thunderstorm gets pretty bad and I get disconnected, a good teacher always has plan B, and C and D and E. My plan B is I have to travel all the way to a place called the dining room, where I have a laptop sitting there, and when I go there, it's already ready to go. So if you lose me, you only have 5 minutes to go to the bathroom and get another drink, all right? Because I'm coming right back. So just by way of background a little bit, I'm gonna talk today about grammar and vocabulary. And you know, I've taught for 40 years. I'm sure in the audience today, we have people who have taught 10 years. 10 years maybe seems like a long time. 10 years is nothing, okay? Trust me, hang in there. But you've been teaching 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I've been doing this for 40 years. I never thought this profession was gonna last for me for 40 years, but I'm happy to say I love what I do, and I'm really happy to be here today and share my ideas with you. Having done this for so many years, it's very rare that I go to a conference event, a session, and think, oh my gosh, I've never heard this before. This is completely new. So today, what I'm going to talk about, grammar, vocabulary, and online teaching. I'm going to combine those three things. I doubt that it's going to be 100% brand new for everybody, but at this point in my career, and maybe in your career, when I go to a conference and a session, I don't try to take 100%. Sometimes I listen to something and think, oh my gosh, that's the most horrible idea ever. And I learn I don't want to do that in my class. But a lot of times I find one or two ideas, and sometimes that idea, I can't use it exactly the same way, but I'm able to take that idea and modify it for my students. Because I'll say this, I don't know your students, and no one else who's normally I would say sitting next to you, but we're not sitting next to each other, but whoever's on the Zoom screen next to you, they don't know your students. Nobody knows your students better than you do. So I hope today, the information I present, I hope you're able to listen to what I'm talking about, do some of the activities we're gonna do, ask questions if we have time at the end for that. And then I hope you're able to take 1, 2, or 5 activities or ideas that will help maybe influence how you teach your classes, all right? One last thing I want to say before I start is I've done this for 40 years. I have a bachelor's degree in this, a master's degree, and a PhD. Forget about all those degrees for a moment, as painful as it is to say that. I actually have studied several languages. English is my native language. My first foreign language was French. In fact, I was going to be a French teacher until I realized you had to know a lot of French. And so I abandoned that idea. I took some classes in college. I gave up that idea and became an ESL teacher. But my second foreign language was Spanish. Hablo un poco español. So Spanish, let's see, my next one would have been Arabic. I was in Saudi Arabia for almost 2 years. Then Malay. There's a country called Malaysia, Malay. Let's see, then German. I've studied German twice, and then Japanese. I was in Japan for 6 years, and my job in Japan was I was the principal. I was the director of a school. So everything below me happened in English with the English teachers. Everything above me happened in Japanese. So you know how we joke about when you learn a language, this is a pencil, this is a book? In Japanese, I learned my first phrase according to the contract, because the teachers were having some problems and I had to talk to the administration in Japanese about the contract. In Japan, Japanese teachers don't have contracts. That's a foreign concept. So my point is, I have studied and learned a lot of languages in very different ways. My French was never in France. My French is sort of so-so. I'm certified to teach French. That's what's really scary. But I have pretty basic, low intermediate knowledge of French. All of my French came from textbooks and watching a little TV or a few videos, but most of it's textbooks. And I was what we call an eye learner in French, an eye learner, meaning I sat in the room, there was a whiteboard, somebody explained things, somebody directly instructed me. I had direct instruction in French. And it was in English sometimes, as sometimes I'm sure when you're teaching English class, you maybe use Spanish in your class. So for your students that are learning English from you, where they're not surrounded by English, that's what I was with French. Spanish was very different. And I had 1 year of Spanish in high school. And when I got to the university, I had a roommate from a place called Ecuador, and he was studying something called ESL. And I kept saying, ESOL, what is ESOL? I had no idea what that was. I'm a native speaker of English, we don't have a clue, right? So, but through his friends who came from Venezuela and Costa Rica and Mexico, they didn't speak much English. And so I learned what? I learned how to help them say, how do you say in Spanish, checking account, savings account, open a savings account. I mean, I had to learn those expressions to help them in English. So I have learned languages being a student, and I've learned languages with Spanish. I had a notebook I carried everywhere. I was an aggressive vocabulary hunter. I mean, I would make people tell me words. What did you say? What was that word exactly? So my point is I've had training in teaching languages, but more importantly, maybe I've been a language student. So a lot of what I'm going to say today might sound sometimes contrary to what an education school might tell us is good, but I'm telling you what really works. I'll give you one example with vocabulary. For a long time, and some people still today will say, translations are bad. Do not translate. And I'm here to say that's ridiculous. People, now if you're teaching kindergarten, it's different. If you're teaching pre-K, K1, 2, where they sing the songs and people just do things, my students are high school age and university age. They don't want to sing songs all day long. They don't want to play games. We're not doing English, we're doing something with English. And my point is that when I was learning Japanese in a classroom, the teacher would say a word. Sometimes one word would stop me from understanding her discussion. I couldn't, what is that word? What is that word? And my strategy for Japanese class was a woman named Karina from Sweden. She sat right behind me. And I was, Karina, what did she say? And I would ask Karina in English, and Karina would say, she said, and we were not disturbing the class. And sometimes when I had that one translation, I would think, oh my gosh, that's what she's saying? She's talking about, it's rice and beans? That's what you call rice and beans? For my Nicaraguan friends who are like rice and beans, casamiento, right? You call it that, or the Hondurans sometimes call it rice and beans sometimes, right? A pinto gallo, gallo pinto for los nicaragüenses, no? My point is, gallo pinto. Well, gallo is a rooster. If I know the word gallo, how would I know that gallo pinto is vegetarian friendly? How would I know that, all right? Gosh, I remember in Spanish, the first time I heard someone talk about repollo. I thought repollo, I swear, this is true. They were trying to make nacatamales from Nicaragua. And we went to the supermarket to help these 3 Nicaraguan girls. And they said, They said, blah, 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 repollo. And I said, no problem. I took them to the section where chicken was because I really thought repollo was a big chicken, okay? Re grande, right? And that's a true story. And that's how I learned the word repollo. Now, if somebody tries to explain repollo to me in Spanish, like, what? What? It's a vegetable. I know, but you do what? But I keep hearing the word pollo. I hear pollo. My brain, this is true, when you learn a new word, sometimes you can't stop seeing the first 3 letters or 4 letters because it influences you so much. Now, there is a lot of research on vocabulary, and that is my big research area, and I'll talk about that a little bit. I'm super happy to answer questions, easy questions especially, about vocabulary and grammar at the end of the session today, okay? But I'm telling you that what I'm gonna say today is not just based on research or 40 years of teaching. It's my been there, done that in trying to learn Spanish, French, Arabic, Malay, German, and Japanese, okay? Having said that, I'm going to attempt to share the screen. So Oscar, get ready to see if I'm able to share the screen here. Do we have success? I think we do.
Yes.
Okay, yes, yay, all right. So, okay, yeah, so I'm sure Lily would be very happy. I got the nice NCTE and the Centro Cultural banners for the first page here. The title sounds very impressive. It's not impressive. It's vocabulary and grammar. So what's the grammar? Simple past tense. I chose simple past tense because I thought, again, we have 400 people here now. I don't know how many, 300, 400. I don't know what you normally teach, but I will bet everybody here teaches simple past tense at some point, right? I didn't do some small grammar point. This is a pretty big, important grammar point, right? And then lexical just means I want you to think about vocabulary. Just because it's called grammar in the English book doesn't mean it's only grammar. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. All right, sorry, come over here. All right, so first, thank you to Lily and Mark and Oscar for helping me do this session today. Again, and you can't imagine, Lily Sevilla, my gosh, how many emails we had back and forth. I'm supposed to be in Costa Rica today. And we tried so hard, but here we are with our plan B. So the objectives for today's session, just to be clear about what we're trying to do. So first, I'm going to review the 2 main forms of simple past tense because grammar is 2 things, form and function. Form, what does it look like? Function, what do you do with it? I'm not going to talk today about what you do with it because we don't have enough time to do that. So you know that you use this for a past action, one time, with words like yesterday, ago, last month, etc. I'm not going to talk about function. I'm talking about form only today. The second thing is we're going to talk about the 3 spoken forms of the ED. Now, in English, the other letters are ED, and you think, oh my gosh, it's so easy, you put ED. Well, and I'm not sure how many people in the audience today have ever tried to teach Spanish to an English speaker. And I've taught Spanish, my strangest class, I taught Spanish in Japanese in Japan to Japanese speakers. And that's a true story. That was very confusing. No English in the class, just Spanish and Japanese. So the ED in English looks really easy, but Spanish is really hard. So you maybe haven't thought about this, and people now say, oh, Spanish is really difficult, English is really difficult. No language is more difficult than another language. There are different parts of each language that are actually more difficult, but the language overall, you might say Japanese is really difficult. Japanese is really easy. You just can't read and write it, but I could teach you how to speak some Japanese pretty easily, right? But so go into Spanish. So in Spanish, there are 3 kinds of verbs. You have aere, hablar, you have ere, comer, and you have ir, like reír or something like that, right? So those are the 3 kind of verbs. Now think about it in English. You put ed, ed, ed. What happens in Spanish? I'll just take a word like hablar, which is an easy one. So if an English speaker says, how do I say spoke, or which is past tense, or say it's talked, you know, put the ed. How do I say, let's use the word live. How do I say lived? Well, live can be viví, viviste, vivió, vivimos, vivieron, right? I'm like, oh my gosh. So the English speaker is like, which one means lived? They all do. So I know you think English is bad, and it is sometimes, I admit it, but Spanish has its own share of bad things for English speakers as well. The ED in English, the easy part is putting the ED. The hard part is the pronunciation. That's my second thing for today. The third one is I'm going to demonstrate some ways of teaching this. I'm not going to be doing traditional ways. You already know, go to the whiteboard, write on the whiteboard, explain things. I'm not doing that presentation today. I'm here to give you some new ideas because it's Sunday afternoon and we are all abnormal for being at a computer screen instead of enjoying a Sunday afternoon outside, in the thunderstorm in my case. The fourth one is, I want you to consider the importance of vocabulary, especially in the examples that you give when you're teaching. You'll see this in a moment. And the last is, we're teaching online today, and one of the problems with us as online teachers, now I have taught online since 2011, so that's already 9 years of this. Using Zoom, this is my first year using Zoom, so I've done a lot of online classes, but I personally have never been a student in an online class. Now, at this point, we're not going to ask you, but I would ask you just to think about this. Have you ever been a student in an online class? Now, you might say, yes, I had some training. This today doesn't count as being in an online class. This is 90 minutes. You can turn this off anytime. There's no pressure. There's no score. Your boss doesn't need your score or your certificate. You can go to the bathroom. You can go away and come back in 90 minutes. Don't do that, by the way. But the point is, that's not the pressure of having a class online for one semester, for 15 weeks, going twice a week, etc. So, you know, you're a teacher. I'm a teacher. Think about all the teachers. Forget about online for a minute. Just forget about it. Think about all the classes that you have been a student in. I've been a student probably 15, pick a number, 18, 19 years of my life, I was a student going through a PhD. Every time I sat in that class, I was an apprentice. I wasn't trying to be an apprentice, but I learned from the person who's teaching things that they do. For example, what do teachers do? They walk into the room. They don't just open the book, they say hello, they make small talk. I never had anybody in my methodology course who told me, talk to the students, smile. No one ever told me that, but you saw people do that. What did you learn? I learned things like, oh my gosh, I can't hear that woman. Please speak up, because I learned enunciate so everybody can hear you. What else did I learn? When you write on the board, don't stand in front of the board. You know, you had a teacher who's writing on the board and you think, move, I can't see what you're writing. So what did I learn? I learned that when I teach, don't do that. Don't stand in front of the whiteboard exactly when I'm there, right? So my point is, we have all had at least 12 years, 16 years, whatever your number is, of being an apprentice practice teacher, indirectly, because you saw somebody do it. Sometimes you liked it, sometimes you didn't like it. Even the ones you didn't like, in fact, if I ask you, name 3 teachers you liked and name 3 teachers you didn't like, and all the way back to kindergarten, I'll bet the ones you didn't like are the easy ones to remember. And you can think, oh my God, I always hated when she, I really didn't like it when he. My point is, you learned indirectly that's not a good thing to do if you're a student. So that's number 5. I'm going to show you, the more you attend these conferences, you learn information, but also these are online, you become more comfortable being a teacher online. For example, we're going to go into breakout rooms today. I learned how to make a breakout room before I had ever been a student in a breakout room. So the first time I had a class and I had to send people to the breakout room, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, what happens when they're there? I mean, do they see me? Do they not see me? Actually, they don't see you. Do they see the whiteboard? They don't see the whiteboard anymore. And I'm going to explain that in a few. So because I had never had the experience of receiving the whiteboard as a student, it made it more difficult for me to be a teacher. The breakout room, sorry. It made it more difficult for me to use the breakout room as a teacher. I hope you follow what I'm saying. You can't be a good teacher of these things if you've never experienced it yourself. I don't, that's just what I think. So for me, I attend a lot of these webinars. There are so many free webinars online now, maybe 3 or 4 a week. And sometimes I go, I don't want to learn about teaching math, but I want to see, how do you do math with Zoom? Like, are they going to use the whiteboard? Are they going to put us in breakout rooms? When they put us in the breakout room, how is he going to make sure we have access to the problem? So my point is, I'm trying really fast to be a better online teacher by being a student in an online class where there's no pressure. because I can sit in my short pants, my t-shirt, turn my camera off, and have my Diet Coke and enjoy life. No pressure. All right, so those are our 5 goals for today. Good teaching online. This is true in the face-to-face world, but it's especially true online. People like to do things. Now, I apologize because today I'm not going to do exactly what I'm telling you to do because I have 400 people. This is not the same thing as having 16 people. If I have 16 people, you would hear me and then they would be doing things in groups almost right away. But think about your class. When I start planning an online class, the first thing I do is, okay, what do I have to present and how short can I make it? And if I'm going to present something, can I give it to the students in advance and make them read it? Or, for example, sometimes it says, go to page 17 in your book, look at the grammar box, and copy, send me an email, or whatever your system is, send me an email with the first word on the page and the last word on the page, and read it. So read the box, and your assignment is not something big, it's just copy the first word and the last word. Oh my gosh, this is so easy. When people think it's easy, they might do the assignment more. So if half the students, now I'm not so naive to believe that everybody will do all the homework in advance. So, but I do believe that if the class is interesting and people like what's happening and they think it's important, then maybe half the class will read that grammar box before the lesson. And if they read that box in advance, then I'm able to do a better class. I'm still going to do my presentation, but I'm going to get better student involvement if students have an idea of what I'm talking about already. So what's the activity? What will they do? Give students a very specific task. And I'll show you some of these in a moment. So today, as I said, we're talking about grammar and vocabulary. And so I know those are 2 very old words, 100 years of research in our field, but by grammar, I'm talking about form and function. So simple past tense, what does it look like? ED for regular verbs. What do you do with it? You talk about the past, especially with yesterday, ago, or last night. And vocabulary is not just words. So a vocabulary can be 2 words, like that gallo pinto from Nicaragua, right? That's going to be, it's 2 words because there's a white space in the middle, but it's really 1 word. So something like living room, it's 2 physical words, but living room is the name for that place. It's 1 name. So it can be a word or a phrase or an idiom. It can be 5 or 6 words long, right? So the point is, vocabulary has many different shapes to it. All right. So what I want you to pay attention to today in our first task is we're going to teach a grammar lesson. We're going to plan a grammar lesson, but I want you to try to include high frequency, useful vocabulary. That's the trick, useful vocabulary. So when students, when you first teach a class, the first few days of teaching, you know, you're trying to make an impression on the students. You might say, well, I'm the teacher, I don't care, it's my class. That is one possibility, that's one attitude. But for me, I want students, if possible, to be interested in what I'm doing. And honestly, not everybody's interested in English. You have students who are taking English because they have to be there and they don't want to be there. And I acknowledge that fact. Not everybody will love English. If we could go to a conference right now of mathematics teachers or science teachers, you know what they're complaining about in the science teacher conference? My students don't like science. And number 2, they don't do the homework. Sound familiar? I think it's the same complaints for everybody. So English isn't special in this case. Students are pretty universal in this aspect. So one way for students to buy into, to appreciate your class and maybe want to do more is when you teach something, make it related to the students as much as possible. So you might say, well, I don't control the grammar. Well, maybe you don't control the grammar. But when you give examples of the grammar, please use examples that they can relate to. Talk about Costa Rica, talk about high school students, talk about football, talk about something like that. And I'm sure you're doing this already. But also, the vocabulary you use, don't use strange words. If you can't think of a common frequent word for that rule, then you shouldn't be teaching that rule, because that tells me that grammar is not useful. When I teach advanced vocabulary here in the United States, in the first day, I have some people, I come to class, people are sitting with the, you know, the elbow up like this, you know, the arms folded, and I see the face of like, I know everything, or I don't want to take this class, I speak English already. And so one of the first things I teach them in vocabulary on day one, I teach them the expression, the bottom line. So the bottom line, I checked it in Spanish because it looks like it would be la línea profunda, and that's not what it is, right? It's an idiom. The bottom line says like en unas palabras. That's what my translation said. So the bottom line is when you're going to summarize something. Now, I teach students who are going to go to the university, and they have to listen to academic lectures by a professor who knows nothing about English language training, because that's not her job. Her job is to know science and be an expert in science. So when she's doing a lecture, she doesn't slow down. She uses normal vocabulary. The students are confused. But here's what native speakers, especially professors, always do, and they don't know they do it. Blah, 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 blah. The bottom line is, when that professor says the bottom line, that professor is going to tell you a summary, indirectly, of what she just said for 27 minutes. And in fact, she could choose anything to tell you, but she's probably going to tell you two things. And me, as a student who's trying to be a good student, I know whatever she says after the bottom line, I have to understand that, because that's probably going to be a test question. Because she could ask anything, but this is what she chose to be the few words to summarize. So what I tell my students is, you know, most students nobody wants to raise a hand and say, excuse me, could you repeat that? We tell students to do that. Nobody likes to do that. If we had 400 people right now, you wouldn't do it. And if we have 400 people, I would not want you to do it, really. But if we had 30 people, if you're in a class of 30 face-to-face, it's very rare for anyone to raise a hand and say, excuse me, I don't know what you said. Because you're admitting that you don't understand. And people don't like to do that in public. But we tell our students, please ask, please ask. People aren't going to ask. The average student won't ask, right? So what I tell my students is, if you're in that class, all native speakers around you, and you're listening to the science lecture, when that professor says the bottom line, mark your notes, because that part, if you don't have it, put a circle and question marks. You have to ask another student to see their notes after class, and you need that gap. Now, that's what I teach them. How do I convince them that I'm telling the truth? After day one, the assignment in advanced vocabulary is always the same. Tonight, go home, turn on the national news, which is at 6:30 my time, on NBC, CBS, ABC. It's a 30-minute program. And for example, if I turn on the news today at 6:30, Lily, I will do this and send you a note. You can tell everybody. I will count the bottom line tonight at 6:30 on the national news. Every news program says it because they all summarize. The economy, blah, 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 COVID-19, blah, blah, blah. The bottom line is many people are getting sick. So they will always do it. And then what happens when class the next day, the students come back, I say, did you hear the bottom line? Wow, Folse, you're amazing. I know. No, you're amazing, because I knew the vocabulary of NBC National News in advance, right? But if you can do that, my point is, if you use frequent vocabulary and your students listen to English, a song or the Friends TV show or something, and if they hear vocabulary that you have used in class, this makes them have confidence in you and your material. And they're more motivated. Then they come back to class and they will learn more words. The more words you learn, the more you understand. It's a cycle. How do you get it started? Use vocabulary that your students will recognize as high frequency words. So simple past tense in English we have regular, irregular. Spanish has the same thing, except you have three kinds of regulars. In English, we don't have that. You have AR. In English, we just have regular and we have irregular, all right? And then what does it look like in simple past tense? Well, it's pretty easy. Simple past tense, you put ED, and then for irregular, don't put ED. What do you put? Well, it depends. How do you know? You have to memorize it. Oh my gosh, that's not fair. Spanish. How can boy change to fui? Somebody explain how the V becomes an F and the O becomes, no. English is not crazier than Spanish. All languages do really, really crazy things like that, okay? And my favorite one is how fui can come from the verb ir, and it can also come from the verb ser. So first you have how boy can become fui, explain that one, and how can soy become fui, and how can fui be soy and boy at the same time? The mystery of Spanish language, okay? Come to English, put ED. See, it's not so hard anymore, is it? I hope you feel sorry for us English speakers trying to learn Spanish. So my question for you, okay, and Oscar, we're going to try to put people in breakout rooms here in a moment. So everybody, here's the question I want you to consider. So you are at the whiteboard, you're teaching your class, and you're going to give one example, only one example. Now, maybe you say, I usually give 10 examples, but you can only do one because you have limited whiteboard space. You have to choose one verb that in English uses ed. So for example, don't put go, or don't put eat, because we don't say eated. And then on the other side, what is an irregular verb that does this? So I want you, I'm going to put you guys in groups in a minute, and I'm going to give you, let's say 6 minutes will be our Oscar on the clock. We'll do 6 minutes. So here's what I want you to do. Now, here are the two I chose. So I chose avoid, and I chose. Now, avoid, in Spanish, evitar. Is it correct grammar? I avoided, you avoided. Yes, it's correct grammar. It practices ed. But can I say this, please, teacher to teacher? What a horrible, stupid choice for the first verb, avoid. Well, you say, well, in Spanish it's very clear, evitar. Well, good for you because you think it's clear. To a person who doesn't speak English and who only speaks Spanish, or I don't speak, vice versa, a person who's a beginner who's learning this ed, it's confusing. It's confusing where this ed came from. How do I say hablé? How do I say something like trabajé, worked? How do I say trabajaste, worked? How do I say trabajó, worked? Wow, it's all the same. Yeah, English is magical, just magic like that. It's confusing. So the grammar is already confusing. If the grammar were not confusing or it were not difficult, you would not be teaching it. You think it's important, you know it's difficult, you know students need it, that's why we're teaching it. That's the why. Now, a lot of things you don't control. You don't control the choice of this grammar point. Everybody must teach simple past tense, but it's your whiteboard. You control the verb that's your example. That's what I want you to talk about today. Avoid is bad. It's just bad because if I don't know avoid, and I tell my friend Karina, what is avoid? And she says, she speaks Spanish today, and she says, Keith, it means evitar. And I'm thinking, what? Yo evité, tú evité. No, lo que quiero hacer es evitar la clase de inglés. That's what I really want here, okay? That's my best example of evitar. I avoided, you avoided. No. That's a bad example. And chose. Now, chose is a real word, and avoided is a real word. But there's a better example. Why? Now, why would I not? I don't want to choose chose because choose has the two O's. Spanish speakers pronounce choose as shoes. I've got chose, which looks like chose. No. And also, it's not it's frequent. Don't get me wrong. It's frequent. Chose is much more common than selected, right? But there are better examples than chose. And that's my example, my question for you. So everybody, please, if you have a camera, please take a picture. Everybody take a picture of the screen right now, or do a screenshot. Do a screenshot, or just take your camera and do a picture of this. And don't check your messages when you go to your camera, okay? Just take a picture. Now, teacher to teacher, and I'm serious when I say this. When I do teacher training classes, but my students now are going to be future teachers. They're students. They're 18, 19 years old. So I'm talking to some students, but they know sometimes I will say teacher to teacher, and I will tell you, teacher to teacher in Zoom, when you put people in a breakout room, now for this conference that Lillian, Mark, and Oscar have organized so well, all of you now have experience with breakout rooms. But maybe before this conference, you had never been in a breakout room, and you didn't know the regulations, the rules, the specifications of a breakout room. In a breakout room, you are gone. Now, in the real room, in the real world, like right now, if I have 20 people, even if I have 100, and I put you in groups, I can stand here and see everybody. I can't hear everybody, but I can see everybody. I can tell who's having problems and who's not by body language, right? If you have a question, or if I see a group that's confused or looks confused, I will walk over there. But in the online with Zoom, I can't see the breakout rooms. And when you go to the breakout room, you can't see me anymore. And the worst is you can't see the whiteboard anymore. You can't, if I'm showing a video, whatever I'm showing in the main room, you can no longer see. So that's why I tell students, maybe they have two devices. I don't like that. You know, two computer screens. A lot of my students will say, Folse, you need to use two computers. I'm having enough trouble with one computer, okay? I'm not doing two screens. And I am not gonna do the screenshot, you can do that, because then I have to manipulate things For me, I just take a picture really fast and then I'm ready. So you have this. So here are the words I chose. So here we have play, add, wash, want, sign, rain, rob, die, study, need, cook, show, pronounced in past tense as played, added, washed, wanted, signed, rained, robbed, died, studied, needed, cooked, and showed. Okay, does everybody have a copy of this? Because you will need this. Now, another way I could do this is, just to let you know, teacher to teacher, I could have this in a Google Share doc. And what I could do is take the link to that and I can put the link in the chat box before you go. I'll show you what I'm talking about.
We just did that for you,
okay.
Dr. Folse.
Okay, good. Yep. That's a possibility there too. All right. All right. So you got that. So here's what I'm now this is what I'm saying here. Your task is to choose a good verb. I'm not asking you to write 20 verbs or 50 verbs, just one, but it needs to be a really good verb. So you will go to a breakout room with 5 to 8 people. I don't know how many people will be there. Maybe 3, maybe 8. We will see. Very quickly, each person say your name. Don't tell your life story because we don't have time. And number 2, nobody cares. Okay. Say your name, your school, and the student population. Do you teach high school, little kids, kindergarten, bilingual? Who do you teach? All right. And then number 3 is the big thing. Which verbs? I need you to choose 2 verbs. Choose one regular verb and one irregular verb that you think is going to be the best example to put on that board. And I want you to think about vocabulary, pronunciation, and it's not a Spanish problem. So for example, some words are, it might be a really great word, but it's a really difficult word for Spanish speakers to pronounce. When you learn new vocabulary, a lot of times new vocabulary, you don't remember how it's written, but you remember how it sounds. If you don't know how it sounds because the pronunciation is difficult, you have a hard time remembering that word. Do not choose words that are infrequent, that's vocabulary. Do not choose words that are hard to pronounce in general, and do not choose words that are a problem for Spanish. For example, don't choose a word that has 5 translations in Spanish because the students, oh my gosh, when I explain something, everybody speaks Spanish in class. Well, if you use a word that can have 5 translations and is confusing, that's not the book's fault. That's not the student's fault. That's your fault and my fault for choosing not a good word. No one is forcing you to choose. You can choose any example you want. It's your choice. This is one you control. Control it well. All right. So having said that, sorry, go back. So having said that, Oscar, we'll go ahead and put people in groups now. And
sure,
for, let's say, 6 minutes.
Sure, we will. Mark is going to help me set up the time for the breakout rooms. And in the meantime, he's doing this. I think that Dr. Folse was very explanatory with the rules. Just one reminder, participate. Take the time to learn from each other, all right? And remember that when someone is speaking, just keep your mic muted. So we avoid like uncomfortable noise, right? And just be respectful. Okay, just be respectful and enjoy this time together. Mark,
here we go.
There you go.
Okay. All right. So Oscar, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one more time. Let me do that. Share screen. Here we go. Sorry, everybody. I was talking to 2 teachers who were very enthusiastic, more enthusiastic than I am, if you can believe that. and I got sidetracked. Sorry. So before I tell you what, you might be shocked to see which one I would choose, but let me explain why I'm going to choose this one. So first, I'm going to be a Spanish-speaking student. I'm from Costa Rica. You give me this list with the ED, allow me to speak English. I will read this list. Played. Tell me how many I get correct. Played, added, washed, wanted, signed, rained, robbed, died, studied, needed, cooked, showed. So how many did I get correct accidentally? Yep, I see. I can't see the person's name there. She got 3. Think for fingers. Think 3. 3 is correct. So the 3 I got correct accidentally. You can say there are no accidents. There are accidents in linguistics. I got added correct. I got needed correct. What else? The other one I got wanted correct. Right. So I will tell you that for me, if I were teaching Spanish speakers on day 1. I would try to choose one of those 3. Why? Because everybody is going to pronounce the ED as ED. They're going to say ed. and I want them to get it correct. Because if I'm trying to explain form, and then someone says play it, and I said, no, played. What? Look, I don't want to be in this English class. I don't want to learn English. You told me it wasn't so bad, and now it's bad. I don't believe you anymore. So in this case, I would choose one of those three. And in fact, I would actually use, I'm going to go with the word needed is what I would do. So here are some examples of what you could practice in class. Now, you might say, this is too easy for my students. I would argue and say nothing is too easy for somebody who is first learning something about a new language. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're in beginning class or in advanced class. Even in the advanced class, you're learning something new for the first time, right? In intermediate class, I'm learning phrasal verbs. And I will have students just sometimes copy the phrasal verbs or circle the phrasal verbs. And you might say, that's just too easy. It's not too easy for step one. So I'll ask the students, write the past tense of these verbs, and you can see it says present. Let's see, it says over here, we got present on this one, and we got past over here, right? If I fill it in, I get this: needed, wanted, visited, waited, repeated, attended. What do you notice about all these verbs over here? I chose 6 verbs for my first practice. They all end with D, like need, or want. There's a T, all right? So if you go over here and take a look, we got the D, we got a T, right? And we got more and more. They all end in a T and a D. So why is that important? Why is that important? Let's see, clear. Why is that important? Because they will say the words, they will now all say needed, wanted, visited, waited, repeated, attended. Everybody gets it correct. So the first time I present this, I don't do any that have a T sound, like wished. I don't do any with a D, like sneezed. And you might say, but these are verbs. I know they're verbs, but I'm trying to help my student who doesn't understand any of this yet, all right? So let's see, let me go out of this for a second, go back here. So the next one here. Now, you can see the other one, it said present and past. Maybe you don't want to use grammar labels. A question teachers ask me a lot is, well, Keith, when you teach grammar, what labels? Do you use noun, verb, adjective, present perfect, future perfect, passive? Do you use these? My answer is what I said at the beginning of today's presentation. No one knows your students better than you do. Will the label help or hurt you? I mean, the students. Will the students be confused by the word present and past? Will they be confused by the word tense? If you think no, then put it there. But if I'm teaching little kids, I'm not talking about present and past. I'm talking about everyday and yesterday. Because people who are 6 years old don't want to know present tense or passive voice or words like that. High school students don't want to know that. Some teachers don't want to know this. So why would children want to know this, right? So that's another possibility. You fill it in, same thing. Now, here's another possibility you hadn't thought of maybe. It says, circle the one that's in past tense. And you might say, this is not very difficult. Well, I know it's not very difficult here. So you might do something like this. Which one? Well, this one's got visited and wanted and counted and waited and needed. Now, I don't see this kind of activity in many textbooks. Why? Because I write textbooks. Textbooks can't be, super thick. Textbooks have to be smaller to save paper, and students, don't want to break their arms carrying the books. So in this case, sometimes textbooks don't include these kind of activities, although I think it's a very useful thing to do. You might say it's very basic. Yeah, it depends on the students is what I would say. All right. Let's see, let me close that out. Oh, where's my arrow going? Sorry, guys. All right, cool. Let's go to the next one here, I think. Yep. Oh no, we want to get rid of that, don't we? Sorry, guys. All right, here goes the teacher who's going to demonstrate. He might know something. Annotate. My mouse. Annotate. I want to clear everything, clear all my drawings. Thank you. Yay. All right, so let's go back. So, I'm going to do a new task now, and I'm going to explain what this is after. I don't want to explain now, okay? And we might have time to get in groups for this. We'll see in a moment. But here's what I'm going to do. I tell the class, we're going to do a test right now about blue jeans. So everybody needs a sheet of paper. Seriously, wherever you are, a small piece of paper. It can be a Post-it note. It can be very small, just something small to write your answer on. We're going to give you a test about blue jeans. Nobody should use Google. Nobody should cheat, okay? Honest answer for 3 questions about blue jeans. Now, why did I choose blue jeans? Everybody knows jeans. Jeans are universal. All students have jeans, know about jeans, want jeans, or had some jeans. So students are, I don't have to teach in Costa Rica 5 years to know that people want to know about jeans, especially people who are high school students, for example, or junior high or university. All right, here's your test. So what I want you to do is, on your paper, you only have 3 questions. So please number on your paper, class, 1, 2, 3. And I'm gonna make it easy for you. Today, class, is multiple choice, but not 2 choices, not 3 choices, not 4, 5 choices. So for each answer, please write A, B, C, D, or E. Let's see who is the most intelligent, who's the wisest person about blue jeans. Guys, ready? Now, why did I do that? Teacher to teacher. When I teach online, sometimes I can't remember what's on the next slide. Sometimes the answers are there, and I don't want to hit the button. Like, oh my gosh, they saw the answers, right? It's going to happen to you. What do? Today's English expression is idiot proof. So I'm an idiot when these kind of things happen. So after it happens, I think, oh my gosh, I spent 2 hours planning this lesson. I ruined it by hitting the arrow. So I often put, are you ready? And sometimes it says, the next one seriously says, are you really ready? I'm serious, I do that because I don't want to have a mistake, because you can't take it back. So, blue jean test, class, number your paper 1, 2, 3, all right? Because at this point, people are, what are we doing? All right, got your paper, are you ready? All right, here's the first question. Levi Strauss is the person who invented this. Where did Levi Strauss create blue jeans? Levi Strauss created blue jeans in A, Austria, B, China, C, England, D, Germany, E, the United States. Those are your 5 choices. A, B, C, D, E. Finished. Bye. Number 2, I'm not sure what those lines are. When did Levi Strauss create blue jeans? Levi Strauss created blue jeans in 1853, 1873, 1893, 1923, 1943. I'll give you 5 seconds. Goodbye. Last question to get 100. Who used the first blue jeans? All right. Was it farmers? Was it railroad engineers? Was it miners? Was it teachers? Was it factory workers? Who used the first blue jeans? 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Pencils down. Pencils. I can only see 5 or 6 of you. Pencils. Okay. So, all right. Now I want to check your answers. Thank you. Thank you. I see people putting their hands up. I appreciate that. Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. I can't see her. I can't see her name, but she's doing the thing. 8. Okay. There you go. See the answers. Thank you. All right. I believe you. I believe you. Now, here's what's going to happen. I want to check your answers. What are my options? I could say, class, number 1 is A, number 2 is B, number 3 is C. And you would say, okay, but you know what? I spent a lot of time on this activity. So today, my message for you, teacher to teacher, is if you have one activity, especially if you spent a lot of time creating it, use that activity for more than one purpose. All right? So this actually was about grammar. You didn't realize it, but it was about grammar. I'll show you. So check your answer. I want you to check your answers. I'm going to show you 5 slides. I have a story. It's in 5 slides. Each slide I will leave on the screen for maybe 30 seconds, 1 minute. Read the slide to see if the answer is on that slide. All right, there are 5 slides, class. Not every slide has an answer. right? Because we didn't have 5 questions. Now, some of my students are like, what? It's okay. So you have your answers. Let's go. What are genes? Oh, you read to yourself. Sorry. All right. Screen number 2. All right. Screen number 3. I see a mistake in number 8. Sorry. They really needed these new pants. Sorry about that. All right. One more. Okay. Last one. I'll read this one. The miners liked the dark blue color. The miners needed really strong pants. In 1873, Levi added small pieces of metal to the sides of his pants. Now the pants were very strong, and now they are Levi's blue jeans. 15. That is how Levi Strauss invented jeans. Now you know why Levi Strauss selected dark blue for the pants. 16. This is why your jeans today are dark blue, not another color. Now, check your answers, which we did already, right? Again, why do you have this thing? To stop me from going to the next slide. That's the real purpose, okay? So this was a reading, and listen, teacher to teacher, I did this fast. I know for your students, you could do 2 ways. You could have people read it by themselves, the way I did with you. I could read it out loud with you seeing the screen. I could read it out loud without you seeing the screen. So I could say, okay, you did the questions. I could then say, now listen, find the answers to your questions. And then after, I could then have you read it. So I would have gotten a practice session with the questions. By the way, all the questions practiced ED verbs. Every question had it created, used, invented, everyone started. ED is everywhere. You didn't realize it, but it's everywhere. And the questions practice the grammar, the reading practice the grammar, the listen practice the grammar. And you know what? This activity, people want to check their answers. So you would say, please read this class. Nobody wants to read it. But I have found if I make it a game, like I'm going to give you the questions before the reading. How many can you get correct? People want to read it. People want to know, what's the answer? What's the answer? I'm not going to tell you. First, you find it yourself. When I say check your answers, I really mean you check your answers. All right? So here were the questions. Where did Levi Strauss create blue jeans? Levi Strauss created blue jeans in the United States. He was from France originally. All right, you see we've got created with an ED, right, in the question. Question 2, when did Levi Strauss create blue jeans? Levi Strauss created blue jeans in 1873, because in 1853 is when he started working in San Francisco. The jeans, I don't know what year he started moving things around, but it wasn't 1853. Levi's had that strong button on the side. That's a Levi's jean. All right. Question 3, who used the first blue jeans? And they were miners. Yeah. Oh, no, that's wrong. Sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's factory workers. Incorrect. Okay. I did this really late at night when I should have been sleeping. Sorry. The answer is C. C is the answer. C, miners. Okay. All right. So form. I'm gonna do this very quickly. When you're practicing grammar, I want you to imagine that I already told my class about the ED. I did a presentation with needed, wanted, created, etc. And then I tell them, we're gonna read a story about blue jeans on a screen, 5 screens, and I want you to find all the EDs. So if you could just raise your hand with fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, how many ED words are in the screen? Let's do this very quickly, okay? Again, I'm doing this faster than normal because we're a little bit past the time I had hoped to be at this point. All right, story of blue jeans. How many ED words do you see on this screen? Correct answer should be 1. Now, I will tell you something. In class, if your students, sometimes when students are saying 1 and maybe they act kind of bored, when people put up the correct answer, they put 1 or 3 or 5. It's the correct answer. You know it's correct. Don't say it's correct. Just say, are you sure? When you say, are you sure, you know what everybody does? They all go back and read English one more time. And people say, it's 1. Really? Wow. When you say really, so what happens is people will read something 3 times. This is reading fluency. Now, here's the best news. This activity generates no papers to grade. I'm going home and have a nice drink and watch TV tonight. I'm not grading papers. But people are practicing English a lot, and they're practicing the grammar focus, which is the ED. All right, screen number 2, a little more difficult. How many do you see on screen 2? Ooh, you need more than one hand. All right, I see 6, I see 7. I don't see 6.5. Okay, all right, here we go. Ready? Answer is, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? Traveled, hoped, moved, looked, discovered, wanted, and used. All right, let's try number 3. How many do you see here? Ooh, what do you think? Yeah, I see some. All right, so for me, I got this many. I got 6, but let me see if I got my own answer correct. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, it's okay. Okay, 6. Okay, yay, I'm correct on that one. Excellent. It's a great test. All right, let's try one more. 4. How many EDs? Okay, this is less than last time, right? Yep. So yeah, let's see. I think 4, right? 4. Now, I'm saying the answer out loud, and as a teacher, I always tell people this, to a future teacher: be careful when you say the answer. Once you say the answer, it's over. So when I was studying Japanese in Japan in the Japanese class, and I was in level 1, level 2, and I was a little bit slow, I admit it, proficiency-wise. And I remember the teacher would say, I remember we had 3 teachers. One teacher was very patient. The other teacher, she would say, who knows what the answer is to number 4? And I'm thinking, number 4, wait, which one's number 4? Find number 4. And then somebody would say, the answer is 7. And she would say, that's right. And then I thought, what was the question? What was the question? Please remember that even in a class that has good proficiency, when you explain something to first time to students, it's difficult, it's new to almost everybody. And be careful when you say, who knows, what's the answer to number 7? Or I could say, how many have an ED here? All right. Or I would say this, you see there are 4 words here. How many of these 4 words are actually pronounced id? We have 4, but call it, change it, wanted, selected. Only 2 of them. But before you say only 2, just say, are you sure? Or let's just wait 1 minute, because you know when you teach, there's always one student who had me, I know the answer, and the other students don't like that student very much, right? So the teacher, you have to be very careful. If I remember from my experience in Japanese, it was very frustrating when the teacher would say, yes, it's 7, it's 8, or the answer is, And I wanted to say, could you please just count to 5 in your head, lady? Just count to 5 and give everybody else a chance, please. Never underestimate how difficult something that's easy is for some of the students in your class, all right? One more here. How many EDs do you have here? Last one, guys. Okay. What do you think? Okay, I see 4 I see 4, I see 5. Answer survey said. Okay, now I'm getting 5, a lot of 5s. Everybody say hello, hello, hi to you too, okay? Liked, needed, added, invented, selected. Okay, now what I just did was, what I just did was I showed you a small reading passage. I wrote that myself. I made the language super low. I only use high frequency words, I hope. When the word was a word they didn't know, like gold, I wrote oro. Minor, it looks like minero. I just wrote minero, I just wrote it, right? When you do this kind of activity, if you have a lot of vocabulary that students don't know, then that's gonna be your lesson. They're gonna speak Spanish, they're gonna have their heads in the dictionaries or looking online for things, and I'm gonna say it's your fault, it's my fault. Nobody knows your students better than you do. Don't use a lot of, it's okay to use 1 or 2 words, don't use a lot of words that they don't know, or that becomes the lesson. And this lesson was supposed to be about ED, ED, and ED. All right. My last thing today I want to talk about is pronunciation. So my students say, watch it. So they say, watch it and play it and show it. Why do they do this? Well, so it turns out in English, if I'm an ESL student and you give me these 12 words, I will say, Rob, how many am I getting correct? Robbed, cooked, arrived, wished, subtracted, snowed, chopped, graded, reviewed, bragged, persuaded, sighed. So how many actually have an id in that one? And so we don't have time to do this today, but I would have the students work with this. Now, I've explained the rule already. I'm doing this in reverse right now, because first off, my students will say, they're all ED. And that's my first lesson. No, they're not. Listen to me. And so they can't hear the T, they can't hear the D, but they can hear the id. So my question for my students is, I'm gonna say these in English now. How many do not have the id? If you do not hear the id, raise your hand. And I will say robbed, robbed, hand should go up. Cooked, hand should go up. Arrived, hand should go up. Wished, hand. Subtracted, hands down. My point is, I'm trying to train their ears. Before you try to teach them to pronounce it, try to help them hear it, right? I'm not saying you have to hear the d and the t. That's a hard thing to hear for Spanish speakers in particular, but you can hear if it's an ud or not an ud. That's my first thing. So we break it into what these are, the 3 groups, and then we arrange them like this in categories. We have the ones that take d, robbed, arrived, reviewed, snowed, bragged, sighed. The ones that take t, cooked, wished, chopped, and the ones that take id, subtracted, graded, persuaded, right? So what's the rule here? Now, I know, and maybe you know, there's a rule about voiced and voiceless sounds, but I'm gonna make a suggestion here. You can teach voiced and voiceless sounds if you want. I don't teach that to the beginning students. I might explain it later. When I'm teaching new teachers, I explain it to the teachers and I say, this is the reason, this is the theory, but students in high school maybe they don't wanna hear the word voiced and voiceless. So how can we make it simple? Number one, you don't have to teach. Number 1, they get correct already. Added. No Spanish speaker mispronounces the id in added. They get it right already. So I always teach group 1 first. That's why my first day it's add, subtract, divide, because they get those 3 correct. You can be the worst student in the class and get it correct. And that's my goal. All right. The next group is the ones that take a T sound. And those are words that these are all voiceless. Kiss, laugh, clap, kick, watch, wash. Those are 6 high frequency words. Now, those 6 sounds are voiceless, but you don't need to know that. So if I'm teaching little children, we practice kiss and miss first. We practice a bunch of S words, then I practice cough, laugh, I practice F words, I practice P words. I do them all separately. So you're getting the rule indirectly. And the last one is the everything else. So why do I do it this way? Group 1, you have to know 2 things, D and T. Need, id, want, id. Group 2, you need to know 6 things. Miss, laugh, clap, kick, watch, wash. Yes, it's voiceless sounds. Yes, that might be helpful for your students. If I'm teaching future teachers, yes, I will teach them that. But many students, excuse me, many students are not ready for that. And number 3, all the others. And that's how I do that. Excuse me, we're running short on time, but I want to show you, I want to share with 2 of my textbooks with you. One of these is called the Grammar Answer Key. The Grammar Answer Key is the 100 most common questions that teachers told me students ask them. Excuse me. And so it's the 100 questions with very simple answers. And 3 of the questions are about how to pronounce the ED, for example. So these are the 2 books I did. One was called the Grammar Answer Key, and the other is called Teaching with Zoom. So like you, I didn't know, in January of this year, I knew the name Zoom. I knew what it was. I had been in a Zoom meeting. I had never taught or led a Zoom meeting. In March 15th, my university went to Zoom 100%. And believe me, I became a Zoom-aholic. And I went to every workshop, everything I could, but all the information was not for teachers. It was about, they didn't talk about students, they talked about clients. It's business. They talked about sales goals. I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm trying to pass a test. And they talked about meetings instead of classes. And that's why I wrote that book. So I'm going to share this with Mark and with Lily and Oscar, this part, but there's a link you can order these books. They both have e-book versions. And I will say this, the Zoom book is under $5. So if you're not sure about Zoom, this is not just how to teach, this is not just how to open the screen, it's why to do it. So in the Zoom book, we don't start with Zoom. We start with what do you really, really want to do in your class online? Forget about Zoom, forget about Google Meets. What do you really want to do? Make a list of your 8, 10, 12 things. And then let's open Zoom, which to me makes more sense. And so I'm late, Oscar, I'm sorry. I'm gonna open up to questions now. I got 5-10 minutes for questions here.
Sure, no worries. Actually, we have only like 2 minutes for questions.
I'm sorry.
Don't worry. We learned a lot and we just had a lot of fun with you. You're very enthusiastic. So thank you for everything that you just shared with us. I just had a question that I just saw in the chat, and it says, what other examples have you successfully used to teach grammar rules without the technical labels, sorry.
Oh, without the technical labels. So for example, simple present tense. Simple present tense can be, you can call it, it's the everyday verb. When you talk, so you can say, when you talk about something that happens every day. Now, I will say this, that label doesn't cover everything. But even, think about it, even present tense doesn't cover everything. In English, when I want to say tomorrow, goodbye, I'm going to I'm going to fly to New York. And my mother says, okay, Keith, when you arrive in New York, I hope you will call me. So when you arrive, present tense, you will call me. Now in Spanish, it's subjunctive, cuando llegues, not cuando llegas, not cuando llegas. Cuando llegas a New York, you know, you're gonna, like a future action here. But in English, we use present tense for the future inside of an adverb clause, a time clause, right? So even the label present tense is not accurate all the time. So for people who are learning English, basic present tense or past tense, they're not trying to do adverb clauses. They're just trying to open their mouth and say, my name is, I live, I study, I eat breakfast. So it's something you do every day. It's always true. So it's like like you teach them the word always, siempre. It's the always verb. What is the verb? I use the word decorate. How do you decorate a verb when you're talking about always? Well, it's very easy. You don't decorate it. If I want to know the word comer in English, I'm a Spanish speaker, I look up comer, my dictionary, it says comer, eat. And so I say, I eat, you eat, a little decoration. He, she, it takes an S, third person singular. I never say that. I'm not saying it's bad. I repeat what I said initially. Nobody knows your students better than you do, and nobody knows your teaching style and what you know and what you're comfortable with better than you do. So for me, I know grammar. I try to use the fewest, the lowest number of labels possible to achieve my goal. So present, I use that, the word tense. Tense tense sounds like you're nervous. That's not a good word to use, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know you have to use some grammar labels. When you teach present perfect, right? He ido, he leído, he comido, you need that label. There's no other way to talk about that except present perfect. So I don't not use labels, but I try to limit my labels based on the students I'm teaching. When I teach little kids, because I have taught second graders, no labels. And when I teach college students, adults, in my experience, adults, high school plus, adults like labels. They want to know exactly what it is. They don't know what to do with it, but they feel safe if they have a label. The label, oh, this is past perfect progressive tense. I can't use it. I have no idea what it is, but I know the label. That's sad for me.
I have one question from Cynthia Olivares. It says, prepositions, what is the easiest way to teach them? And now online.
Okay, so prepositions. Okay, so in the grammar answer key, in the yellow book, there's a really good section on prepositions. So the 3 most difficult things in English all start with P. Think about this. You're English learners yourselves, right? Prepositions, horrible. Present perfect, horrible.
Horrible, yeah.
Phrasal verbs, horrible. The 3 Ps. In fact, if you go to YouTube, on YouTube, if you put my last name, Folse, and look for the 3 Ps, P with an S, there's a YouTube video of me explaining how bad this is. So prepositions. First, what I would say is form and function. Form. Prepositions are little bitty words. They look super easy. They're not easy. They don't you know all the reasons. If you speak Spanish coming to English into Spanish, you know why. But I would say this. There are 2 kinds of prepositions in English. One is a real preposition, where it's on the box, in the box, under the box, right? That's really telling where. It's a location. That's a really preposition. It tells what's happening. There are also other prepositions. That's beginning. Beginning level does on the table, in the chair, by my house, etc. That's beginning level of proficiency, low intermediate. But at the intermediate plus level, we have a second category of prepositions, and those are combination with verbs and adjectives and nouns. Adjective, for example, in Spanish, no estoy interesado en lo que dijiste. Why en? Why en? Why not a? Why not por? I like por. Can I use por? Oh my gosh. So adjective plus preposition combinations, verb plus preposition combinations, and nouns. For example, the center of the page. Why of? Because center goes with of. There's no reason except center of is a good combination. Spanish has the same thing. Why do you say in Spanish, se casó con Jose, and not in Spanish? English, we say ah. Spanish sounds better because like casarse is really, you're together. Spanish is more logical there. With makes a lot more sense. English, I'm married to Maria. Why to? It sounds strange, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So my point, my prepositions are difficult, and I think students need to know that we feel and understand their difficulty, but separate those 2 categories. Teach the location. Do the location ones first. But in the grammar answer key, there's a really cool thing there about a really cool pyramid about at, on, and in. I spend a lot of time with at, on, and in with time and places.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Folse.
Sure.
I know that we have many other questions here, but unfortunately we are running out of time.
Sorry.
But as you said, that yellow book you are presenting us today, the grammar answer key, maybe we can have all the answers there, as you are saying.
I hope so.
Comments. Stephanie Barrantes, I love this webinar. I could listen to the doctor for 3 more hours. This was very necessary. And Henry Valerio was saying, did you notice nobody was using the chat because everybody was paying attention? This is
well,
so
good. Okay.
So this is part of the reactions of our participants.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Folse. And on behalf of the organizing committee, I just want to thank you for your presentation today and for your willingness to share your time and contribute to the success of our online event. So please, everybody, give Dr. Folse a warm virtual applause.
Thank you, guys. Hey, guys, listen, Oscar, what is this? I know you guys have a very difficult thing you're doing. The students, it's difficult for everybody, but everybody appreciates what teachers are doing for the whole world, really. So keep doing it. Hang in there.